So Vern H. Winchell was born October 30th, 1915 in Bloomington, Illinois, and moved to LA at age 9 and ended up at Alhambra High School before going to Pasadena City College as a business major. Not born here, but locally raised guy, Eastern region sort of guy.
Which I feel like has a big donut scene too. I don't
This
really know.
whole story is so crazy of how Eastern reaches, like, I think Laverne might be involved, like all, you know, like Pomona, like that whole area is like so donut-y, like La Puente, obviously. It's so weird that this whole story kind of happens over there because that whole area is boring.
It's so cool.
It is pretty cool. It's cool and undercovered, I think.
I don't feel like people think of that way of the San Fernando Valley anymore. I think there's a lot of SFV pride, but I feel like San Gabriel Valley people are still like, don't tell them about us. Don't bring us up yet. We're not ready.
Okay, we'll let them know that we have good Chinese food, but don't let them go further.
Yeah, don't let them see how nice Santa Anita racetrack is.
Especially when the horses die.
Don't tell them about the 40s either.
So after college, he ended up working at General Motors before he tried to put his business and now car sense to use and opened up a used car lot called Winchell Motors. The world could have been so different.
Very different. And then he stacked up a bunch of tires on the table one day. He's like, I got an idea.
One day he huffed too much motor oil and he saw a tire and thought, I'm going to need to go to the hospital.
Yeah, there's something wrong with my chest.
So when that failed, Winchell Motors, he opened up a jukebox store called Winchell Music.
Oh,
another alternate reality.
Circling the drain right now.
The multiverse of Winchell's.
It's my favorite MCU movie.
And then when that failed, he was planning to open up a drive-in hamburger place, which I can only imagine what that might have been called. Bergchul's. But unfortunately, that failed because before he could even open it up, someone else opened up a hamburger place across the street from the building he had bought to open it in at Las Tunas Drive and Hart Avenue in Temple City, right by the Teapot where we filmed our world famous TikTok at. So now with his hamburger plans gone kablooey, he had to do something with this building. And that's when the romantic backstory of Winchell's came to be, when he found out about the massive profit margin on donuts and coffee, and an institution was born.
It's kind of like I was surprised to find out that you can do really well owning a laundromat. Finding out that it could be lucrative to sell donuts and coffee is like,
yeah. Like we were saying, donuts should be the cheapest thing in the world. Yeah. So like it probably cost maybe 15 cents to make a donut.
Yeah.
And
you could sell a dozen for like what, $10
$400 today. I mean, it's sidecar
donuts, literally. You leave your car, leave your keys, and you can take a dozen donuts.
The car is now on their side because you had to give it to them.
Legally, it's on their side.
So he decided to turn this place into a donut shop, and on October 8th, 1948, Winchell's Donut House was born. Donuts were 5 cents and coffee was 10 cents, which is another thing. Like the profit margin on coffee, like don't charge me more than the donut. Like coffee, if anything is cheaper than a donut, it's probably coffee.
There should be equal amounts.
It had big glass walls so you could watch the donuts being made while you sat in your car. I know, a perfect, I don't need a theme park. I just need a donut shop with glass
I just
windows.
Need a seat in front of that window.
The place was such a hit that in 1949, Winchell decided to open up a second location in Huntington Park and then a third in Southgate. And as Winchell himself put it, they didn't do so good.
Oh, no.
But they did good enough because once the swinging 50s got going, he was opening up 2 or 3 new locations a year of Winchell's Donut House.
Okay.
Again, a very eastern regions of LA County.
Yeah.
In 1953, to make the process smoother for his growing donut empire, he opened up Winchell's headquarters in Alhambra, where they would prepare the donut mix to be sent to all the different locations where they could turn it into batter and fry it up there. He was really smart about all this, and he did something I always admire in someone, and used data to his advantage.
I like Moneyball.
Money donut holes. He saw that 70% of all their donut sales were happening before noon, meaning it was mostly people grabbing a donut and coffee on their way to work.
Right.
So to capitalize on that, he made sure that new locations were located on sides of the street that got the most morning rush hour traffic, so people could easily pull in and grab something. And I went through all the locations I know of in my head, and that's still true. Like the one, did you go to the one in Encino? Or
I went to the one in Tarzana.
Yeah, that one is on the right side, and it's when you're going towards the freeway.
Yeah, it's true.
So weird to think about.
That's cool.
That's Moneyball, baby. I don't need a Derek Jeter location. I can use a insert name of baseball.
Yeah.
But I can use the one reference I know of baseball. I know 2, Mike Piazza and the
Utai Cobb?
Okay, I know 3. The expensive baseball card from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Morty Slappy or whatever his name is. By the 60s, things were going so well that he started franchising stores out and was opening 30 to 40 new locations a year. He had to open up a bigger headquarters in South El Monte, again, Eastern LA County, in 1963. But up to this point, this had been almost exclusively an LA story. And Northeast LA, like we were saying, which is very refreshing to see. But then in 1964, he branched out into the Pacific Northwest and also launched the biggest thing since the Beatles on Ed Sullivan that year, apple fritters. They came to Winchell's.
They came to.
He didn't invent them. Trust me. I looked at immediately when I saw that. I was like, I've got the scoop of the century. Stop the presses.
We have an LA pastry. LA has a daddy pastry now.
But they just introduced apple fritters, which I guess you picked up the Winchell's. You should have gotten an apple fritter.
I should have gotten an apple fritter, but you know what? She was busy. They had now hiring on a thing, and there's a line of people. This arms crossed. So I'm not gonna go and be like,
can you fry up the hardest thing to make for me?
What do you already have in a bag?
This is when the LA History fan fiction came to life, and the Winchell's Donut Company in 1968 was bought by fellow LA breakout chain Denny's.
Oh, really?
Denny's owned Winchell's for a while. At the time of the merger, there were 255 Winchell's locations, but in this new day of Winchell's Denny's, the company bought out all the franchises in 1971 and consolidated power and control, much like the Emperor did with Jar Jar Binks. Senator Binks, sorry.
Senator Binks, yeah.
And he'll talk about it on the Bink Experience.
Bink and you'll miss it. That's the name of the show.
Jar Jar, don't tell me. Then in 1972, Vern Winchell himself became CEO of this entire conglomerate and was now in charge of both Winchell's and Denny's.
Damn.
Under his watch, he grew Denny's massively and set it on the course to what it is today. Not good.
A place where drunk teenagers will hang out at 3 a.m.
He came up with the greatest pun of all time, moons over my hammy.
Say it. Don't point it at the menu. Say it. Legally, you need to say it if you want.
You can't make it. It's
unless
like,
you say it.
It's like Tinkerbell coming back to life. It doesn't exist unless you say it in front of your date. But he also, in this time, he accelerated Winchell's into the stratosphere.
Right.
During the 70s, he grew Winchell's to over 1,000 locations, with some as far away as Japan, Spain, Holland, Korea, and the Philippines. They even had to move again to an even bigger headquarters in exotic La Mirada. Having done his job, Vern Winchell rode off into the warm frying oil and retired in 1980 and spent his days, speaking of Santa Anita, breeding and racing over 60 horses and living in San Marino. He had horses named Mr. America, Ancient Mariner, he must have been a fan of Waterworld, Olympio, Ronnie's Baby, who was raised by Ronald Reagan and bought from Desi Arnaz.
What? That threw me for a loop there. Sorry.
So now whenever people ask you to do the 5 degrees between Vern Winchell and Ronald Reagan, you know now. And Donut King, which was also his nickname. That was one of his horses.
Oh, cool.
3 of his horses raced in the Kentucky Derby.
Wow.
Classic Go-Go, Sea Cadet, and Valiant Nature. None of them won.
All great names though. Sea Cadet.
And for not winning, they got turned into apple fritters. Vern Winchell himself went into the big glue factory in the sky on November 27th, 2002. But back to his donut shops. We're back to 1980. All of this acceleration seemed good at the time, but around this time, a lot of competition started to arise, part of which I'll get into later. And all of a sudden, Winchell started losing their grip on the LA donut scene in the 80s. Stores started closing, and the company had to bring back their franchise program to cope with the newfound losses. They blamed the new proliferation of mom and pop places for their loss of customers, which we're going to get into later. But also apparently Denny's was taking all the profits Winchell's was making and spending it on Denny's locations. So Winchell's locations were starting to look old and run down, and they weren't getting any advertising, which I like, but that's not good for business. I'm told. I took this online course, and apparently it's not good.
A donut is an advertisement for Winchell's.
The bag that says your logo that is in the gutter outside is your advertisement.
Oh, I should get some donuts. I see it in the trash. Oh,
you're right. I haven't had a donut lately. Thank you, gutter. This unholy union between Denny's and Winchell's broke off in December 1986, but things just got worse from there. To keep up with the donut scene around them, they started doing crazy new gimmicks like bear claws and cinnamon rolls. They also made a deal to have their donuts sold in 600 7-Elevens around LA, but even so, they were losing a ton of money and even more of their stores were closing. By this time, they had shrunk to 742 locations, but even with that shrinkage, they were the second biggest donut chain in the United States behind Dunkin'.
Oh, right, Dunkin'.
And by far the largest on the West Coast with 466 locations in LA alone.
Yeah, because we didn't get a Dunkin' until recently, right?
We'll kind of get into that. They've attempted invasions multiple times in the past. Then in 1989, they sold 263 of their locations off to Pizza Hut and were then bought by Vancouver-based Chateau Holdings, who was all about Winchell's offering more than just donuts and coffees. They wanted to add sandwiches so they would appeal to more than just the morning rush people. That seems to be why donut shops offer that, is because like outside of the morning and late at night, like no one's really going
There's
in.
a big gap in the middle.
So like, all right, we're going to offer every meal that you need and scratchers. In October 1989, they opened up a concept test store called Winchell's and More that offered sandwiches, salads, and frozen yogurts, and it was a total failure.
Oh, yeah, of course.
On top of that, Shadow moved their headquarters to Northern California, where they started shipping frozen pre-made donut dough to all their stores, which is a huge step down in their quality. They were just bleeding money, and their next strategy in 1992 was to give their store managers more freedom to customize their particular locations. And also, they started selling their donuts frozen to buy in stores, and you could take it home and warm up yourself, which actually worked for a few years, and then it didn't.
Oh, boy.
And then in 1997, they started Winchell's Express, which was just a Winchell's donut counter inside of other stores, like inside of a Subway.
Oh, right. Yeah. They don't have the room.
Could I get a donut on my tuna sandwich?
Yeah.
I'll get this, and this. Sir, that doesn't... I want this.
I want
it my way. Or I'm going to say some mean rumors I've heard about your mascot. So they started offering also bagels and different shaped donuts for the holidays, but then they realized, let's just get back to basics.
Right.
Who are we kidding? What they had always done best was donuts and coffee. So they decided to just focus on those two simple things. They started marketing their coffee as just as good as Starbucks, but way cheaper, which I'm sure it's fine. In 1999, they started their warm and fresh guarantee that if your donut wasn't warm and fresh between 6 to 9 a.m., it was free, with a light up sign a la Krispy Kreme announcing that we got fresh donuts here. Was yours warm and fresh?
I don't. I mean, the bag was wet, so it must have been warm and fresh.
Oh, that's their wet and sloppy guarantee between 9 and 7 at night. Wet and sloppy. And if it's not wet and sloppy, we'll slop it for you.
You get slopped for free.
They slime you. None of this worked. None of these back to basics worked because their sales kept dropping. So then it was back to the gimmicks for them. They opened up a place called Winchell's World in Pomona where you could go inside and watch the donuts being made factory line style, like in a Krispy Kreme. No singing.
No Raymond Scott in here.
That failed by the year 2000. Then they were thrown a life preserver from their old enemy, Yum Yum Donuts, who bought them in 2004. Like you said, there were only about 200 locations left when they bought them. And that's kind of where they stand now. There's about 170 locations left in 6 states and also Guam and Saipan. It's mostly a Western U.S. thing. They're the West Coast biggest donut chain, most of the locations being branches in Southern California. They offer over 70 kinds of baked goods, over 30 of those being donuts, and they are open 24 hours. But no matter what the future holds for Winchell's Donuts, rest assured that their headquarters is right back where it belongs, in the city of industry in eastern LA County. So let's eat Winchell's now. Okay. You got the Winchell's. What did you get us here from Winchell's? There's a maple bar.
Oh, there's a maple bar, and there's also the chocolate raised with nuts.
Oh, baby. I'm very excited. Okay, let's compare the maple bar. The maple bar doesn't smell as mapley as the Yum Yum.
The Yum Yum seemed like very factory made. It was very straight. When you cut it, it was like a straight line.
Did.
But like this one's a little crumbly at the bottom and bent.
It looks spongier. Oh, it's way spongier.
The bottom's not as firm.
This might be the COVID talking, but I can't breathe. It doesn't taste as mapley as the other one, does it?
The other one was very buttery.
Yeah, that one's not as good, I dare say, as I finish all of it. Let's try this chocolate raised now. Smells nutty. It smells pretty good. Very spongy looking.
Oh, yeah.
I don't taste much chocolate. You're wrong for liking it.
No, I'm getting a lot of chocolate with nuts.
I taste a lot of nuts.
I won't.
What's so funny? What's so funny that I have a mouthful of nuts right now, Greg?
I'm tasting a lot of innuendo right now.
This might be the COVID talking, but this tastes like burnt innuendo. Yeah, I don't think Winchell's is very good.
That's heartbreaking, but yeah, it's not as good as the Yum Yum was.
Yum Yum is better.
A lot sadder in a Winchell's too.
Because all the happiness funds went to Denny's at the Winchell's, so not a fan of the Winchell's still. I maintain my previous stance that I do not like Winchell's, but boy did I love listening to that history, and so did all of you.